Hi, it's Jen back with tea and cookies for 2 for July. And of course, I could not resist the Americana look, which is so classic. I love that country look. I chose American Beauty fabrics from Riley Blake and one of their beautiful basics. I love that white background with the stars and multicolor. We also did our other series, foundation paper piecing in this. And if you're a holdout like I was for 2 decades, just watch the video and you're going to go, that's cool and totally doable. And I love to have a coordinated look, right? Maybe that's in your entryway. This could be a fun little table for 2. So as we have been doing throughout our tea and cookies series, we are changing up our patchwork block, doing that pretty little scallop lacer cut detail here. And then of course we're doing that self-binding technique where you can skip making traditional binding. It's a nice break. If you've just now stumbled onto our YouTube channel, welcome. We're thrilled you're here. Subscribe before you even move on. Just push pause, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you're notified about new videos. And we're coming out with multiple videos a week now where you can learn tips and techniques free 24/7, 365. Free is my favorite word. And I love learning new things, and hopefully you do too. So today we'll be focusing on the block. But if you want to know the entire process, we kicked this off way back with our February placemat, where we talked to you also about how to do that self-binding technique, and definitely need that point turner for that, where I really unpack the whole process. It's a long video, so be sure to check that out. But if you've been following along on the series, let's just dive right into the block. We're actually going to start with the center, where we make a square and a square, and I'll show you a really simple technique for that. We're going to move on to making some half square triangles, and there's something exciting in your kit. Normally, you have to make half square triangles the traditional way, which is more cumbersome, time-consuming, and they're a little inconsistent. We've put something in your kit called a star single. I'm going to show you how to use it. You're going to be hooked, and you're going to not want to make star singles any other way. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put this in your kit as part of that so you can try it out and see if you love it as much as I do. And then we can talk about how to make these flying geese blocks quickly, accurately, with minimal waste and maximum precision. We'll put our block together, and then here comes our borders, and of course our little scallop on our field, and then put the whole project together. So let's just start off with that center. It couldn't be easier, cutting a nice simple square and 4 smaller squares. So let me just bring that out. This is how we start off with a square and a square, the simplest way. And our first step will be just to get a straight edge and to just draw some lines diagonally from corner to corner on all 4 of your white pieces of fabric here on the back side. You'll want to work in opposites. And by the way, anytime you're working with patchwork, let's get the iron heating up to maximum hot, grab your patchwork pins, get the fresh blade in your rotary cutter. I'm the worst, at least I used to be the worst at getting that replaced, and I'd be making cuts and pushing hard and wondered why the next day my wrist hurt. I don't do that anymore. Just get a fresh blade in the rotary cutter and put a fresh needle in that sewing machine. Your results are going to be noticeable by doing those simple kind of preventative maintenance things. So we're going to be marking all 4 of our fabrics with that diagonal line, and notice how those are in opposites. We'll pin that in place, and I just have a gray, which works beautifully. I have the Carrera thread set. I'm drawn to color. I love color, and you notice there's a 3-piece thread set. That was really what we used for the appliqué portion, right? Not necessarily appliqué, but the top quilting. For piecing, putting these things together, a white, a gray, and a black is all you ever need, regardless of the color of the fabrics you're using. If that's you, just pick up the Carrera set if you're doing patchwork. I used to think I needed to have 100 colors in my room to do patchwork. No, I don't. 3 is sufficient. It really does cover the job. Appliqué is obviously a different story entirely, but for patchwork, that's all you ever need. So let's head over to the machine. We're just going to sew directly on those lines to start off with. And we'll press to the outside. I don't trim that extra bulk until I'm sure I like what I've seen. I've done this before where I've set a square in the corner, didn't pin it, moved to the sewing machine and it moved just a little bit. And when I pressed to the outside, you know, things maybe got a little cattywampus. Nope. Then I was seam ripping. That's why I wait, press to the outside, look at the block and say, am I happy with what happened? And if I am, I trim. If I'm not, I seam rip. One of those two things happens. But at this point, I'm happy with what I have. I'll trim. And we simply set those other two squares in those opposite corners. Again, right in that corner. And here. And again, we sew. And again, press to the outside. Check it. Are we happy? Sometimes I flip it over. Is the footprint is the same as the size of the background, right? The background size isn't really changing. We're just adding fabric to the four corners. I'm happy with what I'm seeing. Again, we'll open that up, lay that on, trim, and the center portion of our block is done. And we'll be soon moving off to our half square triangles. So that part's done. I'm going to just give it one more press and we'll set it to the side. Fusible fleece made me think of it. And previously, we've been having you go to the website if you need fusible fleece and have to find that and add, you know, a certain portion. You can also just purchase this pre-packaged. One package is enough to actually do 2 months. It's 4 placemats total. So you only need to buy this kind of every other month, or maybe you can buy a couple of packages. It might be a little bit more convenient for you that way, especially if you're traveling to a quilt retreat. It's nice and packaged. So I just wanted to mention that to you as something we're adding on as an option for you. Okay, moving on. Now that we have the center portion of this, let's talk about that. We know that with half square triangles, traditionally you have 2 pieces of fabric, right side together. You're drawing a line diagonally and sewing a 1/4 inch on either side, cutting that to yield 2 of these, and you have to do 2 more, and you do that for the next placemat and the next one. Guess what? In your kit, and we're not charging really any extra for that, we just want you to try this product. And you're going to go, wow, I'm a changed person. It's so much fun to use these star singles. We're going to be able to make 8 half square triangles with 2 pieces of fabric, perfectly done. They don't need to be sized, trimmed up later, and they're going to be ready to go and nothing flat. They're so much fun to do. 2 fabrics, once again, placed right side together. Let me say this. On the star single, the instructions of how to use this are on the sheet. Half square triangle, 1.5 inch finished block. So that's the first thing I want you to know. If you try the star singles in your kit and you decide, I love this, I want these for other sizes, they come in other sizes. 1.5, they even come in 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, I think all the way up to 3.5. Same process. The process I'm going to show you doesn't change, but obviously the size of fabrics you would be using does change. The very first thing they say is cut 5-inch squares of fabric. Pointer number 1, upsize that just a little bit. We've given you some extra fabric in your kit so that you're able to cut that to about 5.5 instead. Why? Once you place the paper on top of this, notice how I can see my fabric all the way around the perimeter. If you cut your fabrics to the 5 inches they say, your fabrics are actually they're kind of more about this size. And it's much more difficult to position that fabric or the paper exactly where it needs to be. Here, as long as you see fabric all the way around, you're good to go. That's why we recommend a slight upsize and what you've cut. You get the idea. Okay, step 1, cut 5-inch, 5.5 for us. Place 2 squares right side together. Place paper on top and pin. Now let's examine this paper. Dash lines are stitch lines. Definitely shorten your stitch length for 2 reasons. Once we start sewing on, the black dot is where we stop and pivot. Having a shorter stitch length means I can nail that black center circle exactly, and I want to do that. If your machine has a needle down function, engage it now because you're going to want to have that needle in the fabric as we pivot. So we'll come up 1, needle down, pivot, 2, needle down, pivot. You'll see these are the black circles all the way around and be able to sew directly off that. The solid lines are the cut lines. So we want to make sure that when we're pinning our fabrics and paper together, just put your pins in the field where there are no dash lines and there are no solid lines. If you have to, if your pins are longer, at least put them out of the way of the sewing lines. They need to be out of that way so that your presser foot is not bumping into that. So I'll pin out here. And here. And I'll show you, we've done one ahead of time. I want to go show you, I'll show you just a little bit of it so you see the process. I want you to see the process. We've done the whole thing, but let me just get this started. You don't need to worry about starting here. You can start right off the fabric, and now you want to be on that line. Stop right in that circle, right there. Okay? And now we move in the other direction. Slow down so you can hit that circle. There. You get the idea. And then we come all the way around. Let me just cut my thread and we'll go use the other one that we've already sewn. Okay, so this is the one we've already sewn. Remember, the solid lines are the cut lines. Now, important, what you cut is what is going into your quilt block. This is the squaring up. This is the trimming. So be very mindful, very present to be cutting exactly on that line. All the way around. The shortened stitch length that I mentioned not only helped us land exactly in that black circle, but it also helps to perforate the paper because we do want to remove that paper. So it doesn't matter the order in which you cut on the solid lines. They all need to be cut, so it doesn't matter. So I'll continue cutting because I'm going to need this to put our block together. Okay, now we just fold this back and we start removing our papers. So before I do all of those, let me just show you how accurate this is. Incredible. We'll press to the red on all of these. These are squared up already, ready to go into the project. And as we measure these, they are on the money. Look at this from above. In fact, let me move this out of the way so you can see this. These are perfectly cut to 2 inches. That's incredible. And there's 8 of them. Done. It's so fast. All right, I'll keep removing all the papers so that we'll be able to do the final block assembly in the end. and then we'll move on to doing our flying geese units. Okay, and just like that, 8 half square triangles. Oh my gosh, so good. One sheet will get you enough for both of those. If you're picking up just the pattern, maybe you have a stash of fabric at home, you can still pick up the 1.5 inch star singles. And again, maybe there's other ones. That size, by the way, the 1.5 is the finished size, So notice, remember that measured at 2 inches. That's because with the 1/4 inch seam all the way around, it will finish at 1.5. So that confused me in the beginning. I'm like, so if does 1.5 finish at 1? No, those sizes are based on a finished measurement. Okay, so we have our center, square and a square. We have our 8 half square triangles, and now we need our flying geese. The pattern has a technique for you that's, again, very economical. I love how it reduces our waste, increases our efficiency, and with the addition of a trimming tool from Creative Grid, which I'll show you that, it is cool. It is the ultimate. You know, sometimes trimming up a block, I've screwed that up before. I misinterpreted that, misread the ruler. And I'm good at math, and I still misread that. So if that's you, don't think it can be confusing. And sometimes we don't have a ruler that's the exact size we want it to be, and we have to compensate. So I'm going to show you how to set this up, how to use this without the Creative Grid ruler, and then with, and you're going to see, wow, that's the way to go. And yes, it most certainly is. So our pattern's going to have us be cutting 1 large square and 4 of the smaller blue squares. And this is where we're ultimately going, right? We're building this block right here. So this is the larger square. 1 square and 4 blue is going to produce 4 flying geese blocks. So the first thing that we do, I'm going to set this up for you, is in these corners, we're going to work in opposites again. We'll place our blue squares right side together. I love using the Creative Grid seam guide. Instead of drawing a line diagonal and having to find a 1/4 inch on either side of that, you can do that, or you can use the Creative Grid seam guide where you're placing this into position, drawing, because I'm way better at sewing on a line than I am hoping to find a 1/4 inch away from a line. So I think it's just a really great technique to just use that. Now, I'm going to pin that in place. The next thing we recommend that you do is where this overlap happens of the 2 squares. Once I get this pinned into place, I use some really sharp scissors to go in and cut away the bulk. All you need to do is just lift this up, making sure you're not cutting any of the background. And I'm just cutting the excess. That's the whole goal, just to reduce the bulk. Not absolutely necessary, but we have found that extra bulk when you're trying to get points to come together is not helpful. So if you can reduce that bulk, take that opportunity. So directly on that line, and we've done that ahead of time. So let's go ahead and just cut that on the diagonal. Get that out of the way. Any straight edge. And press to the outside. With your other 2 blue squares, you will similarly either draw the line corner to corner and sew on either side, or use your seam guide. So you could draw the line, find that, or repeating what we've already done, which is certainly my favorite, placing that directly in that corner, draw and draw. Now we position this in that corner. pin, and we sew and we sew. Once again, we cut diagonal to diagonal, and we'll press to the outside. We have 2 flying geese, and of course with our extra piece here, we'd repeat that. Seam guide, sew, or actually place that in position, sew, and you would have 2 more. So you already have 4 flying geese that are oversized. Now you need to square up. With the ultimate flying geese, it is truly the ultimate. But let me show you what to do if you don't have that ruler. So right now we need to square this unit up to a 2 by 3.5. If you're not using the flying geese tool, the ruler I'd recommend is this 3.5 by 6.5 has this beautiful delta here that I'm going to start off with putting that right up there in that notch. And notice the dashed line here. That's the 1/4 inch seam allowance that's going to happen when we sew all of this together. So that's a good place to start. And I can trim. So at least I know this upper portion now is that measurement. But how do I manage this 3.5? First off, you have to go, okay, 3.5 and 3.5, that's 1 3/4 to the other side. You see how you begin to go, now how do I actually square this thing up? This becomes a significant chore. I would actually probably, let's see here, start to strategize to say, all right, if I'm going to, yeah, I like what I'm saying. I'm going to go with the 1 3/4. Let's start with this. This is how I've trimmed up blocks wrong. Miscalculating, okay, which side do I start with? How do I manage this? So let's flip this around. Again, we know 1 3/4. Should be right there. Right there. Trying to not let the ruler move. And we said 2 inches, right? So I'm going to turn that ruler, trim this here. And make a cut. Okay, we arrived at the destination, but the journey was uncomfortable. Let's do something way more reliable, less stressful, and a ton more fun. With the other same unit here, same goal, we still have to trim this up. If you're using the Creative Grid tool, use the lines marked for the letter C. Now, this is the Creative Grid Ultimate Flying Geese, and the measurement that we use to cut our white fabric is on the tool because we know that this needs to finish at 1.5 by 3. This is a finished size measurement on the ruler. Remember I said it needed to be trimmed up to an unfinished measurement of 2 by 3.5, which is a 1/2 inch bigger than these because of seam allowances. So knowing that these are finished measurements, that this, once it's sewn into our block, will measure 1.5 this way, 3 this way. Well, we got to have seam allowances, right? So we're going to start off with 1.5 by 3. We're going to be letter C. We've already cut that. We're here. Now we're at the trim function. So we're already downstream at the trim function C. This is why this tool is worth its weight in gold. That shenanigans I just did, and we got there, but it was uncomfortable. It was even confusing for me. And I do this all the time, but I don't use it. I don't trim up blocks like that anymore. That's why that was like, ooh, how do I do that again? Watch how cool this is. Letter C. All we have to do is set that beautiful dashed lines right here, right into that slot, right there. Notice that immediately exposes the right side and the top side. And this works awesome in conjunction with a spinning mat. Not required, but that is, of course, a lovely combination. So we know right now, 2 sides of this flying goose unit are perfect. Continue the rotation one more time, and up top exposes my trim to function. And again, there's my letter C. I'm going to bring my block here, drop that right into that slot right there where I see that dash line, this dash line, that one along that side, this one here, exposing the other 2 sides that need to be trimmed, 1 and 2. That not only is so much simpler, it's fun, and the blocks are stunning. All right, I'll just keep trimming up the blocks and I'll be back. Okay, so now we have all of the elements to make our block. Of course, we want to lay everything out and make sure everything looks like it's going to fit. And we know it will. We've used some good products, some good techniques. I love that. When I was a younger quilter, it was a lot of praying that it was going to work because I didn't have the discipline, the knowledge, the tools, and really the experience to feel confident with these different processes, good pressing, all the things we talk about, that I could be confident in the results. So there was a lot of, let's see if this is going to work out. All right, we've laid out the block. Now we're just assembling in rows. Of course, your top, middle, and bottom row. Some of the things I want to point out to you is really pinning and that position. By us having that kind of that V coming up, that's your visual target where you want the needle to hit at that juxtaposition or slightly to the right of that, but not left. Otherwise, we're going to potentially cut that off. So as we stack this here, I can feel the V on the bottom side as well. You're going to want to pin in those places that matter to you the most. So I'm going to pin in the middle and then in those corners. Here, because this is going down, when I place this right side together, oh, I love how those are opposite. There's a beautiful nest right there. I can feel that click right in. I'm going to put that pin right along that seam going this way. So I'm going to stack those. And then here as well, let's do that. Flip that over. Oh, I love that, how that just clicks in. I did not know the importance of pressing when I was a young quilter and experienced. That nested seams is a good start to a good points. Now I'm going to use my seam guide to hold me true. I have my diagonal seam tape, and I've already tested my machine to know that when I place my seam guide on the far right of that line, that's my barrier and it helps me not so chunky. That's been very helpful to me to get that dialed in. When you keep sewing sections without cutting, it's called chain piecing. You use a lot less thread. This is the spot I'm talking about here. The needle needs to pass at that place or slightly to the right of it. I mean slightly to the right. So we have our upper portion, our center portion, So if we press this way and we know that this is here, automatically, let's take a look at that block, right? So we're up here. We want to have interlocking seams, and so that seam is going to be pressed this direction. Opposites, so that we do have interlocking seams. See that? Here, there, so that ultimately when we end up sewing that together, right, that locks. All right, you get the idea. Here, there. That means the bottom row is also going to be going inward. Okay, let's give that a press. Lay the block. Boy, I've done that before where I laid it out and I turned something, of course. Right here, lay it out, so everything looked good. Same situation, right side together, right side together, right side together. You get the idea. Stack, pin, pin, pin. In fact, let me just go do that. I do want to show you some techniques for top and bottom. The top, pinning this and where to pin because that matters. So let me get this sewn together. It's the same we just did. And then I'll have that pressed, and then we'll do 2 more seams, and we'll have our patchwork unit done before we add any borders. Lay out the block once again, and what do we care about? We care about our points. That's what quilters are proud of, is that when these points come together, because that's not luck. At least for me in the past, it was actually luck. Now is technique, using the right techniques and the right tools to assure consistent results that you can be proud of. Pinning is not different, and being intentional of where to pin first and where to pin second. So as we look at this, we understand that these are the most tender and important areas to us. So we're going to pin there first, pin right there. Those are the 2 most important locations. And then we pin in those corners. All right, let's go sew that. That really makes everything work. Everything just works. Now again, I'll flip over the block so that you can see the pressing. And those instructions, of course, are in the pattern. But sometimes, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's true, right? These cliches are true. And again, for the other one, right side together, interlocking seam. I have to finish this with you. I just have to. I know you know, right? Oh, look. I'm glad that actually happened. Look how I know I pressed this wrong. Look. That seam's going this direction. This seam's going this direction. Nope. No biggie. I just take it here to the iron, flip the seam to the opposite side. Now Look at that. Boom. They just click together because there's an interlocking seam here and here and on the other end. Man, pressing is so important. Seam allowances are so important, and the direction in which you press is so significant. All right, and then of course you would be doing another one, second one. Just as we've done before, we have our star field. Again, this is like my favorite fabric from Riley Blake. It's a basic, it's called Seasonal Basics, I think, Patriotic. I just love these stars. One of the reasons you love our kits, you don't have to trace and cut this out. Prefuse laser cut applique, give a good little crease there and get that paper off the back. Take that right to your mat. Place that into position. That's where we take our blue and go ahead and stitch around that for both of them. Of course, before we do that, we need to add our borders. I got all excited about our applique there. Here, just like we've been doing, side borders are going on, top and bottom borders are going on. That part's done, and you can see all we did here. Right side together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, press. Once you have that done, that's when you begin to add in your fusible fleece. Your self-binding technique comes into play, and of course, if you need a refresher on that, be sure to check out that longer video that I filmed. This, again, is a break from traditional binding that many people don't like to do. They kind of see it as a chore, where this is a really fun technique and very achievable even for a beginner. How fun is that? I hope you guys are enjoying the series, eating plenty of cookies. Kathy's been making cookies for us each month. We've been having fun finding different cookie cutters, different colors of frosting and sprinkles, and the whole 9 yards. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that right now. Let your friends in your quilt guild know we want to build a community of quilting worldwide where people are able to encourage each other. We have fun, projects we share, and so much more. Be sure to pick up your kit, your thread set, and I'll see you soon on another Shabby video.